Storytime. It was open. If you're reading this, let it be your sign to always trust your gut. We moved now, but my old house was in one of those neighborhoods where nothing ever happened. I'm sure you've heard it before. Everyone left their doors unlocked, and it was really safe, until it wasn't. Anyway, one day I came home from school, and I just knew something was wrong. I can't even explain why, but my mouth went dry, and I started sweating. My first thought was to go inside of my house, because that's where I've always felt safe. But when I went to the side door we always use, what I saw made me stop dead in my tracks. The door was just wide open, and inside it was completely dark. I tried to keep telling myself I was overreacting, and I should just go inside and check everything. But no matter how much I tried to talk myself into it, my feet wouldn't move. I finally got the courage to walk over to the door, and I started to go in. I only had one foot through the doorway when my inside started screaming for me to run. So I did. I backed out of the house, closed the door behind me, and ran to my neighbor's house. I have two older brothers, so I just told them to come and pick me up before they went home. I didn't warn them about anything because I still thought I was just making everything up. But when me and my brothers got to the house, I knew I wasn't crazy, and I knew I wasn't making a big deal out of nothing. The side door was wide open. I'm positive I closed it, and my brothers were just as confused. We all went inside, looked around, and we couldn't find anything. I told my brothers we should call the cops anyway, but they just called me dramatic. By the morning they would know I was right. The entire neighborhood was woken up by sirens at 4 in the morning. Everyone else knew it was bad when the crime scene tape started to go up, but I already knew whatever happened was horrific. From my window I could see their side door. It was open. Storytime positive. I feel like my life is either turning into a nightmare or I'm going crazy. A little backstory. I've been going to church all of my life. I never really made a choice to go, but that's what my parents did, so that's what I do. I've never had an issue with church, but 2 weeks ago the weirdest thing started happening to me. The first time I noticed something was off, I walked into the church building, and I started to feel really dizzy. I hadn't eaten that morning, so I figured that was it and tried to forget it. But by the end of it I felt horrible. I was sweating. I thought I was going to puke, and everyone kept telling me I was pale. As soon as I stepped foot out of the church doors, and I mean immediately after, every single thing I was feeling just went away. I knew it was weird, but I just thought it was the fresh air. I felt completely fine until the next time I walked into my church. I passed through the doors, and what I felt was so painful it took my breath away. My whole body felt like it was on fire. The pain was so unbearable I had to back out of the doorway. Just like the last time, I felt better instantly. I stood there for a second while everyone passing looked at me like I was insane. I waited until everyone was gone, and I tried to go inside again. I started with just my hand, and when I felt nothing I put my whole arm inside the church doorway. Still nothing, so I tried my foot and my leg. I didn't feel a thing. I thought I was good to just walk through the doors, but I couldn't have made a bigger mistake. Once I was inside, every part of me was burning, but this time it wasn't just a feeling. I could see bubbles popping up on my arms and hands. I got out as fast as I could, but this time I knew I wasn't imagining it. The burning went away like it did before, but the bubbled skin still covered my hands and arms. I left and I haven't been back to church since, but now church is the one place I feel like I need to be because I'm terrified. I had a nightmare that I gave birth to this creature. When I looked at it I knew it was here to destroy everything. I woke up screaming because the dream felt so real. This morning I took a pregnancy test. Positive.
Storytime alive. I had always known my birthmark was unusual, but I never thought it would turn into my worst nightmare. It was a small, raised mole on my forearm that had been there since I was born. One night, I scratched at it and I felt something weird and sharp. I looked down at it and realized something was poking through, so I rubbed it again. I still felt the hard, sharp thing poking through, but this time, I realized how sharp it was. I couldn't believe it, but my finger was bleeding. I tried to squeeze whatever it was out of my mole, but it wouldn't move at all. It didn't hurt or anything, so I figured I would just grab a nail file and get rid of it. I filed at mole and it did the trick. I could still feel that there was something hard in it, but it wasn't sharp anymore. I went about a month without giving it much thought, but then my arm was constantly in pain and it was getting worse. The dull hard piece I filed down had grown longer, and it was this weird light yellow color, and it wasn't alone. On either side of my mole 2 more hard sharp pieces were growing and sticking through my skin. I started to panic because the 2 new ones were white and sharp. When I touched them, a pain I've never felt before shot through my arm and went all the way up to my neck. I thought my bones were coming out of my skin. I knew I had to get to a hospital immediately, but I still can't believe everything they told me. While the doctor examined me, she also tried to squeeze the sharp pieces out, but when she did I noticed her eyes get really wide before she got up and left quickly without saying a word. I never did see her again. I was really confused when a new doctor came into the room and explained that my mole wasn't a mole. It was a tumor that had teeth, spit and hair. It was alive. Storytime. She couldn't. I do a lot of online dating. I mean a lot. I meet new girls all of the time, but sometimes there are really special ones I want to get to know inside and out. I haven't felt like that in a while, so I was so glad when I met Brooke, and she was everything I was hoping for. Her smile was amazing. She actually looked like her pictures, and the most important thing, she smelled clean, not like perfume or cigarettes, just clean. We were having a really great time on our date at the restaurant, so I wanted to ask her if she wanted to come back to my place and get to know each other better. I could tell she was feeling nervous, so I made sure to turn the charm all the way up. I waited until dessert, and even though I was nervous, I finally asked her. She seemed like she was about to say no, but to my surprise she agreed. She had no idea, but it would be the worst decision of her life. We got back to my place, and I fixed us something to drink. We sat together in my living room, talking and laughing for an hour. I realized it had been about 15 minutes since Brooke had moved her hands, so I asked her, "Brooke, if you wanted to take a sip of your drink right now, could you?" It's my favorite part when they think it's such a stupid question. I watched as her facial expression went from excitement to confusion, and then my favorite, complete panic. I reached under my seat and pulled out my favorite getting to know you inside and out toys. I made eye contact just as Brooke tried one last time to take a sip from her drink. She couldn't.
Storytime. I knew her. I'm not sure how to explain what's happening to me, but I need help, and I don't know where else to turn. My name is Emma, and for the past week, I've been receiving voice memos on my phone from a girl trying to warn me. This all started one night when I was alone in my room scrolling. Out of nowhere, I get a notification saying, "Your voice memo has been saved." I was literally on my phone, and I didn't record any voice memo, so I was confused and curious. When I opened it, to my shock, I heard a girl's voice saying, "Emma, listen carefully. Something's coming for you." I have brothers, so I tried to dismiss it as a prank, but there was something about this girl's voice that made me really uneasy. It was almost like I recognized the fear in it. Over the next few days, I kept checking for more memos, but there was nothing. Until one day there it was. A new voice memo recorded at 2:56 a.m. when I was asleep. The girl's voice sounded increasingly panicked, as though she was desperately trying to warn me about something I needed to avoid. After the second memo, I started getting new ones every single day, and they were always at times I wasn't near my phone. The messages started to get weird, and she was saying things like, "Don't trust them," and "Watch the shadows." It started to make me paranoid, because I was constantly looking over my shoulder and questioning everyone around me. Then, one evening, while listening to the latest memo, I realized this girl's voice seemed really familiar, like I knew her from somewhere, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Earlier today I was hanging out with one of my brothers. We were both on our phones when he started watching a video. I couldn't see what he was watching, but I could hear it. A wave of relief spread over me as I heard the same voice leaving me the memos coming from his phone. I was certain it was a prank, and we would have a good laugh about it, but when I grabbed his phone and looked at the screen, my stomach was immediately in knots. The girl in the video with the same voice. It was me. Storytime. Nowhere else to go but up. This is your warning to stop reading here if you don't like gross. I'm a nurse, and I see tons of nasty, gross, scary things. But there was this one guy that came into the emergency room complaining of severe stomach cramps, vomiting, and numbness in his hands. We ran all of the usual tests, but everything came back normal. He seemed pretty healthy, and we couldn't figure out what might be causing all of his symptoms. Then, while going through a sheet of routine questions, I asked him when he last used the bathroom. When he answered, I thought I had definitely misheard him, because there was no way I heard what I thought I heard. I asked him again, and he repeated the same response. 2 months. We immediately sent him down to radiology for x-rays, and when the images came back, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He had the largest blockage in his gut that I had ever seen. The only thing we could do for him was give him medicine to help him use the bathroom and let nature take its course. We sent him home, and I didn't think about him again. That is until he came back a few days later, and he was living an actual nightmare. He was in so much pain he was screaming, and it was almost impossible to talk to him. I asked him if he had taken the medicine we gave him, and he said yes, but he still hadn't used the bathroom. That's when I asked him what he had been eating, and his answer stopped me in my tracks.